All right, great American Torch Relay participants. I am so happy to be here with Craig Virgin tonight, who, if you do not know, is the only U.S. male to win the World Cross Country Championships, which he did twice. In 1978, he had the second fastest 10,000 meter time of all time. He is a three-time, he's made 3 Olympic teams. And for us Atlantans, he's very special because he has won the Peachtree Road Race 3 times. So Craig, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome, Sloan. It's my pleasure to be back in Atlanta, even if it's digitally.
Where are you?
Well, I'm in Lebanon, Illinois. That's my hometown. I was born and raised here. Well, actually, I was born in Belleville at a hospital, but my parents, brought me home, and I grew up on a family farm north of Lebanon. I'm actually on the family farm south of Lebanon. This is the 100-acre farm that my dad was born and raised on. And when I said born, he was actually back in 1931. He was born in this house. So the people don't realize that I was born and raised here, and then I won Peachtree from 79 to 81. I ran a total of 10 Peachtrees, and for 4.5 years, I actually lived. So for 2 years in 83 and 84, I lived part-time in Marietta when I married an Eastern flight attendant. And so you know how old I am when I said I married an Eastern flight attendant, because Eastern Airlines has been gone for quite a while now. But then I lived down there full-time at a house in either East Marietta proper, East Cobb, and then finally a house out in West Cobb. So I watched the growth. It was phenomenal. I left at about 90, but I was there either visiting for Peachtree or whatever from 78, 79 on, and I saw the growth in those 10 years, and it was phenomenal. Well, it's only been twice as much in the last 20 to 30 years. So that's my connection to Atlanta. I did live down there for a while, and of course, I think the connection that will always exist, that will always be special. In that famous movie, they'll say, well, we'll always have Paris. Well, for me, I'll always have Peachtree. And Peachtree, those first 3 times that I ran and the first 3 times that I won, the only times that I won, there was this bond, this connection that took place, Sloan. It was just, I was very comfortable there. First of all, I like sweet tea with lemon. It's my favorite drink. Second of all, I really learned to like, biscuits and gravy and salty ham. And also I learned to love grits. And so if you can eat salty ham and buttered grits and eat iced tea, drink iced tea with sugar and lemon in it, and you love it, you're very comfortable in Atlanta. What was special, in St. Louis, I was like the local boy that just did good, but I wasn't anybody special. But when I came to Atlanta for a week before the Peachtree Road Race, and maybe, I don't know if your viewers can relate to this or not, but for a week before the Peachtree Road Race, every Peachtree Road Race, I was treated on equal with the professional baseball, basketball, football players. I was on demand to be on radio and TV shows. They had several stories in the newspaper that week. People knew my name. They came to the expo and they lined up to either talk with me or get my autograph at the Adidas booth. It just really was a wonderful thing. Again, they just don't have winners that have a connection with the race and the community. And then you make it the fact that it's America's birthday on July 4th.
It's special.
It just doubled the fun and the pleasure.
So of the three Peachtrees you won, so 81 was sort of that's the one that, and we've sent out this video to our participants, was just absolutely special. Temps were down, humidity's down, everybody's ready to go fast. So tell us about that year specifically.
When I woke up that morning, it was only 64 degrees, but most importantly, the humidity was down. I knew that it was going to be a special day. And Rod Dixon, that was his first. Rod Dixon was a famous miler, 1,500, 3,000, 5,000 meter runner from New Zealand that was world class. And I think he might have had a bronze medal in the 72 games, I think. But he came to Peachtree for the first time in 1981, as he had started to run in the American Road Race circuit in 1980. And he even said, boy, I kept hearing these bad things about how hot Atlanta was on July the 4th. And he said, I walked out of my hotel and it was wonderful. And so, when you have that kind of a day, Sloan, you've got to take advantage of it. But I really had no choice, because there were two guys up front, specifically Rick Rojas from Colorado, that took the pace out right away at the gun. The start of the races back then had a lot of drama, and you had to be very careful in the first 100 to 400 meters that you got out of there cleanly and you didn't get tripped from behind. That was probably the biggest risk, was getting tripped from behind, because people were all jammed up.
Wow.
And that was just part of the magic and the appeal. Rick Rojas took off. Adrian Leak, who was a graduate of Eastern Tennessee, he was from Wales. He ran a very unique style. He pranced like a pony. I called him the Welsh pony, because he just pranced on the balls of his feet. He was one of those ball of the foot runners as a distance runner. And anyway, so Rick and Adrian took off, and we came through the mile somewhere between 4:20 and 4:23. It was really fast. It was like a track race. And I was back around, I was in the top 10, but I was like 5th, 6th, 7th. I just tried not to lose my cool. And then at some point I may have gotten back as far as 8th place, and then slowly worked my way up through the pack. It was an incredible race. Of course, on July the 4th, like every Peachtree, there were people lining the streets, and the people at the bars in the first 2 or 3 miles were up on the roof with their Bloody Marys and champagne and orange juice. What's that called? Mimosa. So they had their Bloody Marys and mimosas. It just became an annual ritual that even the non-runners said, what a great way to start the day. Let's go down to Peachtree. The thousands of people, thousands and thousands and thousands that lined the route. There was really very few gaps in the street. Maybe at the bottom of the hill before you go up the Heartbreak Hill, Cardiac Hill, whatever you call it, to the hospitals there. In the old days, that was the toughest hill as we would approach. I think shortly after, with the 3 mile was at the bottom, and then there was a double stair step hill to get to the top. And the people were just amazing. And in that second mile, we were still kind of going slightly downhill, and we came through 2 miles in 8:40 something, and I was still back in like 6th, 7th, and I was saying, wow, I've never felt like this, and I've never been this far back behind. And then we started going up that big hill, and my whole thing was to try to reel some of them back in, and I did. Some of them paid a price, and I was able to crest the hill in about 4th or 5th. And I finally did not go into the lead until about 4 miles. Which, now the course was different back then. They hadn't closed down. We would go all the way from Peachtree down to, what was it, 14th Street? That takes you straight up to the old gates to where the Colony Square is. Is that 14th Street?
Yeah, that's 14th.
And that's where we turn left at. So we actually went down and then would have to do another climb from Peachtree up to Colony Square. We'd crest that hill, and then we would go down into that gate. And so I took the lead with 2 miles to go, and you can see on the TV show that Rod Dixon is tracking me like a heat-seeking missile. If I ran on the left side of the street, he'd run on the left side of the street. If I ran on the right side of the street, he'd run on the right side of the street. And so finally at the top at Colony Square, I gave it a little burst to get the top to see if I could get separation. And Sloan, I looked behind me, and I said, damn, I've got a 350 miler just like 20 yards behind me, and he's just, his nostrils are flared, he's focused on me, and I said, I know he's got a big kick. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And as I'm coming down from Colony Square to that gate, Sloan, I thought to myself, and I said, that last 3/4 of a mile has always been tricky. It's a lot longer than most people think it is because there's a lot of turns in the old course, okay? And you didn't just go straight in. You went in, and it was if you run Peachtree and run in Piedmont Park, you know what I'm talking about. Go find the old finish line. I saw it with you last December. It's still partially on the sidewalk, and there's the poles are still there where they used to hang the finish line banner. But so every time I said, well, I know this course, so every time that I go around a turn and Rod Dixon loses visual sight of me, I'm going to surge just a little bit. And I did that. Every time I went around a turn and got out of his vision, I would surge. And so that 10 to 15 yards became suddenly 20 and then 30. And then when we hit the 6 mile mark with a quarter to go, I had 30 to 40 yards, and I said, there's no way I'm not going to die that much. He'd have to run sub 50 seconds for the last quarter to beat me, and he's not going to do that. And I just put my head down, and I just tried to keep from tying up, and I pumped my way in, and my face was still passive, but inside I was screaming. Everything was screaming inside my body. I was so tired, and I hit the finish line. If you see the video, I just about collapsed. People come underneath me, grab me by the arms, they carry me through, and that's when my knees were just, I was buckled. They were just buckled. And I had run an American record. I beat my old record by a ton. I ran like 28:04. It was actually 28:03 point something, but it was not only a new Peachtree record, it was a new American record for the 10K road race. It was just a perfect pace, a perfect day, and the pack carried a lot of people to PRs. And it was a magical day in Peachtree history. I know there's been 50 of them. There should be 51 this weekend. And who'd ever dream we're going to run Peachtree on Thanksgiving? I never would have.
It's going to be different.
But in 50 years of Peachtree, that's got to be one of the best days that they've ever had, and the runners responded. And it wasn't just the men. The women did, the masters. If you look at those results, it was epic. I mean, there's really no other word that I can use to describe 81 other than epic. It was a race that stood out from all the others that I ran. People don't realize that Peachtree course, and especially back then, it was a hilly course. And you had to have a gutsy race, good conditions, and a very fast first 3 miles to run those kind of times. Because you had to make up in the first 3 miles for what you were going to lose in the 4th mile going uphill, and also in the 5th mile where you had to go back uphill again to get to Colony Square. And so you have to take when Mother Nature gives you a chance to run faster with a downhill, you've got to take it. And that's generally how records are set. You have to think about it from the get-go.